All set to go. So we are going to talk about allergies and asthma tonight. All these, what they call atopic conditions. So first, I just wanted to recognize you guys for being here, especially with our nice weather.
Oh, it's beautiful.
Yeah.
You weren't afraid. So, but I get excited when we do these workshops. This is an opportunity I have. I can really get into deeper, more things that we're not able to during the adjustment. We have our mission and our purpose, and when I'm adjusting and I'm in that adjusting mode, my goal and my purpose is to educate and adjust and focus on chiropractic. That's really what my goal is. When we do these workshops, now we can dive deeper into other health topics because our mission and purpose is to educate and adjust as many families as we can and really help families create healthy lifestyles as well as help them improve their overall health through chiropractic. So this is when we can venture outside of chiropractic into other realms of health. And sometimes we do different programs. The next program is going to be on GMO foods, which is really important. Most people don't even know what that is, and they don't know how food is genetically modified. That's GMO is genetically modified organism. So it's how food is grown and how it's modified. And so this is a really important talk. So a little commercial for that.
Do you have the dates yet?
We don't have a date yet, but we'll be putting that together. I've been doing research on that for over a month so far. So I just have to make sure that, okay, I'm done, ready to roll, and then we'll put some dates up. But we're looking at the end of May. Typically what we do with the weather this year, it's been a little different with all the storms we've had over the winter, but typically the third week of every month is when we do a program. So we'll get back on track with that. So tonight we're going to talk about allergies, asthma, and I don't know if I've shared my story with you, my chiropractic story. This is part of my story, and this is why I get excited when I do this talk, because when I first went to the chiropractor, I was in a car accident, and I was on the road to go to a soccer game in high school, and we were in a school van, and no seatbelts or anything. I was in the front row in the center, and we were hit from behind, so I had nowhere to go but into the console. And I had a really bad injury. I had a herniated disc in my low back. So I went to the chiropractor. I went to a neurologist, orthopedist, and finally went to a chiropractor. And I didn't know anything about chiropractic. I didn't even know how to spell chiropractic. But he was a friend of the family. And he said, well, why don't you bring Mike in and we'll check him. So I went in and he helped me. Now his practice, though, was really geared more towards musculoskeletal discomfort or pain. So he took care of me for a period of time and it helped, and then the pain was gone, so I went on my way. He never explained to me to maintain the adjustments or how chiropractic really plays a role in your health, so I didn't know anything different than what he told me, which was, if you have problems, come on back. Well, I was fine probably for about 4 or 5 years, and then I started really having major problems. Couldn't put my socks and shoes on, couldn't sit on a toilet for a better part of a week. I was in pretty bad shape. And this would happen about 3, 4, got to be about 4 or 5 times a year for a couple of weeks. I'm throwing my pants on the bed, trying to get them on, and somebody said, why don't you go to a chiropractor? I said, well, I've already been there. He's done his work. He said, no, go see this chiropractor. So I went, and the first thing he did was took time to explain to me what chiropractic was. Not so much from a pain standpoint, but more from the standpoint of health. And I understood what he was talking about, and it made sense to me why I was having the problems, because I didn't maintain my adjustments. But then he threw me off and he lost me, because then he started talking about the loss of curve in my neck, how that could be related to my allergies, and how the adjustments can help with overall health. And I was, all right, no, wait a minute. I was good with the spine, and now you're talking about things that are health related. But it made sense to me, but I didn't understand it fully. But I took a journey and went on the road with him, and it helped me. And that ultimately led me to where I am today. I said, I want to do this. So for me, this is something that is very personal, because I remember 7th or 8th grade, I can't remember which one, but I was in middle school in science class, and we would sit not an individual desk, but in these long desks that 2 people would sit at. And I can remember sitting on the side next to the window, and it was spring, and I got to sit next to the girl, Christina, who was great girl. Happy to sit next to her. 7th and 8th grade, that's when kids are growing, and and she was growing faster than some people, and I just thought, this is fantastic. I didn't have the nerve to talk to her, but I figured I'm sitting next to it. That's a good first step. The problem was, it was during the spring, and I would sit there and I had in my pocket, you know how some people, they chew tobacco, they get a ring, you know, with a tobacco thing in their pocket. Well, I had like this square ring, this square worn out part of my pants because I was walked around with Sudafed boxes, really bad allergies. And I would sit there and I think, oh, what is this girl thinking of me? Because I was runny nose and I had tissues. I put them in my pocket, get a new one, Sudafed, and I was a mess. But that's how I lived my life in the spring and sometimes in the fall. Didn't know anything to do other than blow my nose, take Sudafed. That was it. And I remember cutting lawns. I worked for a landscaper, and I would come home when I was in high school, and I'd sit on the couch, and I'd go to sleep, fall asleep, and I would. That's how I'd wake up. I couldn't breathe well. I didn't know what was happening, but I knew something was not right. I didn't know what to do. I, got up, walked around, and I was okay. I didn't realize I was having what most people would call asthmatic attack. Well, when I started getting adjusted by the second chiropractor, those things didn't happen anymore. You know, I can go cut my lawn and not have that response. In the middle of pollen season, I can go outside and I wouldn't have to worry about the runny nose, watery eyes. It didn't bother me. So most times when we think about allergies and asthma, we think about the runny nose, watery eyes, the trouble breathing. And we say, well, you have allergies, you have asthma. And it must be the pollen, the dust, the grass, or some type of irritant that's causing your allergies. Or take care of kids, and some kids have exercise-induced asthma. I talked to someone the other day who had stress-induced asthma. It's like, oh my gosh, we have now diagnosed different types of asthma. And we start to look at those symptoms and we start to treat those symptoms. It's kind of like this iceberg here. When you look at the iceberg, on the top, that's the part that we see, the smallest part of the iceberg. That's like the symptoms. I have allergies, I have runny nose, I have headaches, I have, kids of colic or stomach problems. And we start to look at that iceberg and we say, well, let's take care of the symptoms. If we can cut that iceberg at the surface of the water, we don't see it. We think, okay, everything's all right. And that's the way we start treating problems. If the symptoms go away, or we can minimize the symptoms, now the problem is better. But in reality, this is the part that causes the ships to sink. This is where the problem is. It's the part you can't see. If you were to cut that iceberg and take it away, what would eventually happen to the iceberg above the surface? It'd come back, right? And we say, oh, the problem's back, or it's returned again. Well, it never went away. You just didn't see it. See, health is a continuum. It's not, well, I'm healthy today, and now I have these symptoms, I'm not healthy. Health is a continuum. You're either accumulating more healthy cells and tissues in your body than you are accumulating damaged ones, and you're moving towards health. Or you're accumulating more damaged cells and tissues than you are healthy ones, and you're moving towards sickness or disease or ill health. The problem is, in the beginning, we don't see it. We don't see that happen. We see the effects of that over time because we start to have symptoms. But the reality is, health is from the inside. And treating the symptoms doesn't correct the problem. And we see that with allergies and asthma. We're going to get into this in more detail. But that's how most people view health. So as we get going, we're going to create some ground rules. We're going to kind of get a foundation started here. And if you understand how the body works, you'll understand more about the allergies and the asthma and eczema, all these what we call atopic conditions, hypersensitive reactions. So first, I think the most important thing is we have to understand that our body's meant to be healthy. By design, we're meant to be healthy. We're meant to be active. We're not meant to all of a sudden break down, degenerate, and die an early death. I always talk about the timeline when we're born. We're born and we have colic and ear infections, and then allergies, and then asthma, and then headaches, and girls have problems with their cycle. And later we have, upset stomachs and reflux, and on. And this is normal. Not because it's normal, but because it's so common. And we've kind of set ourselves up to accept that as, well, that's pretty normal. But that's not really how we're supposed to be. We're supposed to be healthy. Secondly, we have an intelligence within our body. There's an intelligence that's expressing itself within us all the time. And that intelligence, as long as it's able to express itself, manifests in health. That intelligence is how we heal, our heart beating, our lungs are breathing, stomach's digesting food. We don't have to think about any of that. It all takes place because of that intelligence. That intelligence is what takes 2 cells and in 9 months forms a baby. And in 16 years enables that child to drive. We don't have to do anything. Of course, we have to kind of guide and lead along the way, but the baby learns how to walk, learns how to crawl, learns how to eat, digest food, figure things out. Happens on its own. That's the manifestation of that intelligence. It's also within our immune system. You know, if you cut your finger, it's going to heal. It's going to heal from the inside out. You can't do anything to it. You can cover it up, maybe clean it, but it's going to heal from the inside out. So that intelligence is expressed within us. We just have to acknowledge that. We'll talk more about it when we talk about the allergies and especially the signs and symptoms. Also, your nervous system. It's a master control of the entire body. It's the part of the body that regulates every other part. From your brain, through your nerves, through your spinal cord, out the nerves. This is the master control of the entire body. And as long as your nervous system is functioning without interference, your body can express that intelligence. Lastly, the spine. That's the protective mechanism and the lifeline for your nervous system. It's like the coat of armor. As long as there's no interference within the alignment of the spine, there's no interference in the nervous system, expression of health is expressed to its fullest potential. So that's really important for us to realize and understand and acknowledge, because that has a lot to do with what we're going to talk about tonight. Because when you look at allergies, we say, well, how do allergies develop? You know, I was okay, then all of a sudden I turned 20 or 30, or when I moved to Virginia, all of a sudden I've had allergies. But why is that? You know, it's not the pollen, it's not the grass or the mold or the environment or the location of where I live, because if that were the case, everybody would have allergies because everybody's breathing the same air. But it's our immune response. It's how our body responds to those things. So let's talk a little bit about your immune system, because this is the first line of defense. Your immune system, it's kind of like the armed forces. You have the Army, the Navy, Air Force, Marines, the Coast Guard. You have this group of people that when everyone is coordinated in their efforts, mounts a defense, protection. Now, your nervous system is the system that communicates and coordinates that. But your nervous system coordinates all of your defense system, coordinates your immune system and your immune response. So as long as your immune system is working at a high level with no interference, now your body can adapt and respond to whatever is irritating it. So let's look at your immune system, because this is important to understand. When we look at your immune system, it develops 2 ways, either innately, inside, or it's acquired. So innately, it's kind of like somebody who walks into the recruiter's office and says, hey, I want to join the armed forces. You have a certain amount of skills and a certain amount of abilities, right? That's your innate immune system. That develops inside. Now, once you're born, now it's like entering the military. You enter boot camp. They're going to refine those skills. They're going to give you more skill sets that enable you to defend the country, so to speak. Well, the first time your immune system starts to develop, as you go through the birth process, you go through the birth canal, and you're going to be exposed to bacteria in the gut. But that's important. That's the first time that little infant is exposed to something different than its perfect environment. That's the first time it starts to say, hey, we're going to start developing an immune system. And this is going to be part of that. So it identifies that bacteria, so now it can develop an antibody against it. Then when the baby's born, you start to breastfeed, and which is an amazing thing. As soon as that baby goes up to the mother, there's a communication where the mother actually innately knows what type of antibodies that baby needs. What does it need? IgE, IgA? What type of immune system building blocks does it need to develop an immune system? Just through communication. Does it need more protein, more carbohydrate? Everything is through that communication. It's amazing. Now, the next thing that develops is baby starts crawling. Starts crawling and picks something up. Where does it go?
In the mouth.
In the mouth. When we say, no, put it down, they don't know any better. But that's actually an innate response. The baby puts something in his mouth because baby doesn't have teeth yet, but it has soft gums. That's able to be penetrated. So they put things in the mouth, and they're naturally putting bacteria and germs in the mouth, goes through the gums into the bloodstream, body identifies as foreign, it says, hey, next time we see that, we know how to respond to it. That's the immune system developing, right? Then we're exposed to all different types of childhood conditions, so to speak. You know, I'm one of 5, and my next door neighbors, there were 3 kids there. One of us had chicken pox. So the parents basically said, take all your clothes off except your underwear, go roll around together in some room until everybody's itchy and red splotchiness, and then you can come out of the room. They exposed us all to the chicken pox. But after that, we all developed an antibody against chicken pox. That's our immune system developing. And that's going to help us later in life. That's our immune response. That's how we start to mount a defense against things like pollen and mold and grasses. That's the first time that happens. The problem is we kind of circumvent that whole process today. You know, when we look at the birth process, 1 out of 3 kids is born cesarean. So 1 out of 3 kids does not go through the birth canal and start the development of their immune system because they're not exposed to that bacteria. 1 in 3 kids. Cesarean births are meant to and designed to be for emergencies, but now they're like routine, right? So right away, we start to change the development of our immune system. Then as the baby's born and breastfed, the CDC recommends 6 months of breastfeeding. Now I'll show you how this has changed. In the 1940s, the average length of breastfeeding was 2.8 years, almost 3 years, right?
Wow.
Now if you read research from like natural associations and things like this, the guidelines are at least 2.5 years. So 6 months is what is recommended, right? The unfortunate thing is the lack of immune system support that we get. Yeah. Now we may have to supplement and things like that, you know, as we did with our kids, you know. But we breastfed, my wife breastfed, right, through about 1.5 years old, because we knew that was important for their development. But today we don't do that as much. And then as a child is born, I mean, we live in a sterile environment. You know, you gotta, now everybody has the sanitizer and stuff like that, which is great, but the reality is it probably doesn't kill 99% of bacteria. You know, you can wash your dishes. My wife gets annoyed at me all the time. I'm washing the dishes. She's like, well, that water's not hot enough. I said, sweetie, I can't turn the water hot enough to kill off all the germs on this plate. I'm making it look good, but I'm really not killing off the germs. But we live in a sterile environment where, well, no, let's not let the kids touch that. Wash the hands off. I mean, years ago, we eat our food in the dirt. We ate the dirt, and it didn't bother us, you know. But it's also other things that can influence our immune response and the building of our immune system. You know, we're inundated with more antibiotics now as children than ever before. It's interesting, and I don't like to use a lot of quotes and things like that, but this is important to understand why we are the way we are as adults. This is something, and I might have shared this before with you, something from Anthem. I get a newsletter as a provider, and they say that initial treatment of ear infection should be amoxicillin. And if it's a chronic ear infection or an ongoing ear infection, the appropriate response would be high doses of amoxicillin, right? But what's interesting is the CDC, right, James Hughes, who's the director of the Infectious Disease Unit, says that of the millions of prescriptions of antibiotics written a year, they are at best essentially useless. Goes on to say that antibiotics don't work against illnesses caused by viruses. Most cases of colds, flu, coughing, bronchitis, sore throat, ear infections, sinus infections, or allergies, right, are caused by viruses and cannot be cured with antibiotics. Now, I'm going to tie this all together with allergies and asthma in a second. Now, they're doing a lot of research that shows that the increased use of antibiotics as an infant and a young child increases the risk of asthma. Direct association. So now we have a child that's been taking a lot of antibiotics, has asthma. Now what do? Now we treat the asthma with another drug. What's interesting is one of the inhalers from GlaxoSmithKline, they did a 28-week study on Ceravent, one of the inhalers, the steroids. 28-week study, and they said everything was fine. But then they found out that they withheld a lot of the research findings. And they found that researchers continued to follow the folks on their study for another 6 months and found that Ceravent actually increased the patient's risk of death. Right? I mean, this is like common practice. But the reason I say this is because as we go through life, that's the erosion of our immune system. We try to change or alter that intelligence from being expressed. And we wonder why pollen causes us to have runny nose, watery eyes. I'm not going to get into a long discussion of this, but what I'm trying to do is set up a foundation so you understand where we are. Vaccinations is it can be a very heated issue, right? There's opinions from the medical community, from the religious community, philosophical opinions. But what I want to do is just show some correlations here from a statistical basis, not an argument as to the use or non-use of vaccinations. In 1953, the CDC recommended 4 vaccines, 16 doses between 0 and 6 years old. By 1983, they recommended 7 vaccines, 23 doses. Okay? 2013, 14 vaccines, 49 doses between 0 and 6. Now, if you use the boosters up to 18, you're at 16 different vaccines, 70 dosage. Now, not to get into a whole discussion on this, but in 1976, 1 out of 3 kids had learning disabilities. Today, 1 out of 6. 1 out of 27 kids had asthma. Back in 1980, now it's 1 in 9. 1990s, 1 in 555 kids developed autism. Now it's 1 in 50. When you look at statistics, what's happened is you can see a direct correlation with the use of all these medications and inundating our bodies with that, especially at a young age, when our immune systems, our nervous systems they're in developmental stages, right? They're so fragile, and we have now altered them. We've exchanged that for now more chronic conditions. That's why so many people now have allergies. Because the way we go about things is looking at symptomatic changes for relief. So when we look at allergies, to me, allergies are more of a behavioral problem, not so much a reaction to pollen. What I mean by that is how your body behaves or responds to its environment. Why do some people have allergies and other people don't? Everybody has an allergic reaction to pollen, to mold, to dust. But why is it some people have a hypersensitive response? Some people it's subclinical. In other words, I don't feel any different. But your body is still adjusting and adapting to that pollen. It's a foreign substance. But some people go into a hyperactive response to it. And that's something that we call allergies, or we term that allergies. It's not the pollen or the mold or the dust, but it's your response to those things. So it's important to us to understand, well, how does our body mount a response? That's our immune system. Now, what interferes with the immune system? Well, the things I just mentioned, right? Because the allergies, if you look at how the body responds to things, you should have a response, breathe those antigens in, respond to it without any interference. But when we have a hypersensitive response, how does that happen? Why does our body do that? Now, granted, we can't turn back the clock and say, okay, I'm going to be born again. Well, I guess you can, right? But I'm going to go breastfeed and do all these things. We can't do that. So what do we do now as adults? So we have the knowledge now to help our children, grandchildren, but what do we do as adults? What influences us now? Well, a couple things. Number one, how we take care of ourselves. In other words, when we get a cold or when our body's stressed, what do? Do we enhance our health or do we try to change it? That's number one. Number two is diet. Hugely important when we talk about allergies and asthma. The food and we're going to talk about this in great length when we do our next workshop on GMO foods, but this is something that's very important to understand. When we have dairy can be hugely congestive to our sinus membranes, our mucous membranes, and can produce a huge amount of stress in that part of the body. When we recommend taking someone off dairy when they have allergies, especially the kids, it's amazing how things change immediately. I mean, within a week, hugely different response. The reason why is because our body, well, it's not meant to drink cow's milk. I mean, we're the only animal. Have you ever watched Animal Planet or Discovery Station or things like this? You watch the animals like safaris and stuff. Like you don't see a giraffe saying, man, there's just not much water here in this desert in Africa. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to head on over to that elephant, and there's not much to drink. You mind if I just kind of hook up for a little bit, and have some of your? No other animal does that except us. No, like if you see a cat and a dog, they're not going to all of a sudden switch, right? We're the only animal that goes up to another animal and drinks its milk. Now, if we're drinking raw milk, that's a little different. But the way our milk, see, we produce these enzymes called lactase. You ever hear of like lactose intolerance or lactose-free milk? After the age of about 7 or 8, thereabouts, we stop, or we definitely decrease the production of lactase, the enzyme that breaks down lactose. Now, I'm going to get into this in a lot of detail next time, but from an allergy standpoint, we can't break down the milk properly, right? So if we can't break down the milk properly, that's why when you drink milk, you get that film on your tongue and all, because your body can't break it down. It's trying to get rid of it. Well, that's what happens within the sinus passages, mucous membranes. It builds up. So dairy is hugely congestive because we can't break it down effectively because it's another animal's milk. Cow's milk is about 3 times thicker in terms of its bonding than mother's milk. Mother's milk is like water. Right? Cow's milk is very thick. That's why now we have such a high selection of soy milk and rice milk, almond milk, all these different things, because people can't, they're intolerant to it. But that's something that with allergies, if you simply cut out or definitely decrease dairy, can have a huge impact on your response to, pollen or whatever causes your hypersensitive reaction. Huge difference. Whether it's white foods, dairy, grains are another thing. Grains are number one, milk or dairy in general is very acidic. So the higher the acidity, the more acidic, what happens is it causes inflammation. And inflammation and acidity decrease your immune response. So you're counteracting your body's natural defense against whatever it is that's irritating it. Grains do the same thing. Grains are very acidic. They produce or cause the increase of different enzymes within the body, okay, especially within the liver, okay. So when you have more acidity, now what's going to happen is you have a decreased immune response. So you're decreasing your whole defense system against these irritants that are introduced to your body. And as soon as you introduce these foods, like for example, any type of grains. Grains also produce they come with it 2 proteins called gluten and gliadin. You ever hear like glucose intolerant? Now these 2 proteins that are made to cause wheat to increase or rise, what they do is they cause your body to go into a state of fight or flight, which automatically decreases your immune response. But they also cause something called intestinal permeability. What that is, when you eat foods, it permeates through the intestines, small little particles, right? That's how it's absorbed in your body. But when you have these substances or these proteins within grains, it increases the intestinal permeability of larger food particles. So now say, for example, you eat peanuts. Part of a peanut isn't going to be broken down all the way. It's going to travel through the intestine and the bloodstream. Your body's going to see that as a foreign material. And it's going to mount an immune response to that peanut. Now, gliadin and gluten they're kind of stealthy. They're like sneaky. So what happens is they start to look like our cells and tissues within our body. So now as soon as you eat a peanut, your body starts to mount an immune response against itself. We call that autoimmune diseases. So peanuts, soybean, anything in a pod, they produce lectin. Same thing as gluten and gliadin. So now, I mean, years ago when I grew up, we go to school, probably every other kid had peanut butter and jelly. Nobody even thought twice about it. I go to my kids' school now, and they have a special table for the kids who have peanut allergies. And there's 1 out of 9 has peanut allergies. That's like 2 kids in every class. Now, it's such a high prevalence, now what they do is they take the kids, if you bring peanut butter, you have to sit at a different table. My son Michael, he's 11, he's afraid to bring peanut butter and jelly to school. Right? Years ago, everybody had them. But peanuts, Now, they're also genetically modified if they're not organic, so that brings in a whole nother realm of changes within your body, chemical makeup. But basically what you do is you mount an autoimmune response as soon as you eat that peanut to your own body because the cells look the same. And now we have all these food allergies. We wonder, well, why? I read an article from a medical journal, and they said, well, one of the reasons why we're finding peanut allergies so prevalent is because we cook them differently. We roast them. Whereas years ago, we didn't roast them like we do now. I'm thinking, no, it's not the roasting. It's the chemicals that you put in them. But that's why we have such a high prevalence of food allergies. Your body identifies that food as itself and starts attacking itself. I mean, we had all these conditions that basically never existed before. We came up with the term autoimmune disease, but we see food allergies so prevalent, and that's one of the reasons. It's the food that we eat because it's not broken down properly. You know, we're designed to eat fresh fruits and vegetables, healthy lean protein, healthy fats. Now we start making food and genetically modifying the food, and that changes our chemistry. It changes our response to it and our immune response to it. That's why we see such a high prevalence of food allergies. But also with these other allergens, you know, be it pollen or dust or mold, when you're eating these foods, you're naturally decreasing your own immune response. They tax your body more. When your body is healthy, it's in a very alkaline state. You have a higher pH. When you eat foods like dairy and grains, and you know, I'm going to go into a whole list of them next time, but preservatives and additives and dyes and all of this, well, what you're doing is you're causing your body chemistry to totally change and become acidic. And when your body is acidic, you automatically suppress your immune response. So just by changing these little things in your diet, you can alleviate a lot of that sensitivity to what we call allergies, just by changing that. And that's something that most people don't think about. But when you think, where does this food go? Well, it goes to every part of my body. So the cells and tissues in my body are made up of dairy or grains. Well, your body's naturally going to be in disharmony with itself because it's not meant to have that. And that produces a lot of stress on your body. When you have more stress, you have more acidity, you have a decreased immune response. So just by changing those things, I see this with kids all the time. You know, the foods that we eat now are so different than they were 30, 40 years ago. You know, when we ate peanuts, they weren't genetically modified. You know, genetically modified food, I don't know if you know much about this, but genetically modified food, Monsanto is a big food company, and they are one of the biggest GMO producers. Well, genetically modified food was designed so that the crops didn't die, right? So what they do is they call it, it's not RAID, it's Roundup ready crops, or Roundup resistant crops rather. So what they do is they take the DNA of the seeds of the food that they're growing, especially corn, soy, wheat, things like this, and they introduce Roundup. And they introduce viruses and bacteria within the cells as food. So now they grow the food and they spray the fields with Roundup, crops don't die. The second way it works is they introduce, you know, these changes, these modifications to the food, so that when the bugs eat the food, they die. So they eat a little bit of the corn, they die. They don't damage the whole crop. This is what GMO food is. To me, most people don't. To me, anybody who eats should be at the next program because most people don't know about this. And this is in the food you eat. And in the United States, we're one of the only countries that doesn't mandate the marking of the food as GMO. We don't have to tell you, this is what we're doing to your food. So when you go to the store and buy this, you don't even know. But this has a direct effect on allergies. You know, allergies are just a, no pun intended, tip of the iceberg when it comes to GMO food. But there's a causal relationship there with allergies. And if you can eat cleaner, you're going to help your allergies. I don't even like to name it allergy, but you're going to change your response to the things that cause that hypersensitive response just by changing your diet. And this is a lot of the things that most people don't know because they don't know what's in the food. They don't know it's been changed. So now we have a lot of allergies, prevalence of allergies. Well, look at the foods that the kids eat. It's so different than it was years ago. You know, you ate an apple, you ate an apple. Now, I don't know, what is it? They're actually designing meat because they're afraid that in the next 40, 50 years, there's not going to be enough fields for all these livestock to you know, graze on. So they call it meat, genetically engineered meat. You won't even know it's on the shelf. You won't know it's on the shelf because it's called
synthetic meal.
Yeah. So, but I'm digressing a little bit, but this is stuff to be aware of. You know, when you talk about allergies, for me, when I do a talk, it's important for me to give you the reasons why. What happens? We can talk about allergies. Everybody knows pollen causes some reaction in my body. Well, why? If you understand how the body's supposed to work, if you can't mount a proper immune response, maybe because of the things that we mentioned, the birth process, the breastfeeding, the inundation of chemicals and things like this, or maybe it's just my diet. You know, when you're not going to inject steroids in your body, but a cow, we just talked about how antibiotics, now the prevalence of antibiotics increases the direct relationship with asthma. Well, cows are inundated with antibiotics and hormones, so they grow faster and produce more milk. And they graze on grains. They don't graze on grass. A cow that grazes, and any kind of livestock that grazes on grain, is going to grow faster and be heavier.
Well, they also feed them leftover M&Ms and peanuts and stuff like that.
Oh, it's amazing what they feed them.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they feed them stuff that they never should be fed.
Arby's.
I watched it happen, and I'm going,
Yeah.
"Are you kidding me?" And the people will reach right in there and eat
Yeah.
the same stuff that they just because it's like trail mix.
Yeah.
And they feed that to the cattle.
Arby's
fatten
had a
them up
big thing
and
when Arby's switched to organic meat. They were handing out a flyer that showed the cows and the animals that they were buying, you know, the meat from, not the meat from the cows, but you know, the livestock. They were being fed bubble gum with the wrappers and all this, just to gain weight. Oh no, this is real. People look at me and they think, oh, come on. You know, I heard about you chiropractors, you're off the wall anyway. So, well, we might be, but this is the reality.
Cows have
People
7
don't notice.
stomachs. By the time it gets to the end,
Yeah.
the wrapper's gone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
People don't realize it, but these are the things that cause stress to the body that have a direct relationship with your allergies and your immune system. You know, this is stuff that's real important to be aware of. You know, I'm going off on little tangents.
Well, that's one reason we have so many cancers these days. If
Well,
your
there's
immune
cancer.
system is down.
Sure. We're all fighting cancer every day. We have thousands of cancer cells in us. Everybody does. But why is that cancer subclinical in some people? And some people, they can't mount a response against it. So it manifests itself in, you know, that disease. Oh, without a doubt. We're going to get into this with the GMO talk, but it's the same process, whether it's pollen, whether it's cancer. If you have a poor immune system, you have a poor immune response. So one of the things that I look at, you know, just from a chiropractic standpoint too, understanding how the body works. You know, we look at what we put in the body, well, we should be able to utilize what our body has. And this, when we study the nervous system and the immune system, they're interrelated. You know, you can't differentiate the two. So if your body is able to increase or enhance your immune response, now you'll have a better response to the things inside and outside the body and respond better to them. You know, when we see folks with allergies, we want to make sure, especially the cervical spine, the upper thoracic spine around the shoulder blades, folks that have asthma, that's the nervous part of the nervous system that goes to the lungs and the bronchioles. And the lower part of the mid-back, your adrenal glands. Really important in your fight or flight and immune response. You know, it's not necessarily a line I'm like, oh, asthma, we're going to adjust you here. But with asthma, what happens? Your bronchioles constrict. There's more mucus that's secreted in the bronchioles, so it's hard to get air in. So if we can reverse that by stimulating the upper back, that part of your thoracic spine is called the sympathetic nervous system. By stimulating that part of the nervous system, it causes your bronchioles to dilate. It inhibits the secretion of mucus. So now, We see great responses with kids with asthma or adults with asthma. You know, this has been going on since the early 1900s. Well, before that we talked about Hippocrates. It's been going on for centuries, but documented with chiropractic since the late 1800s, early 1900s. So the correlation between different parts of your nervous system, the upper cervical spine, people always, and I feel the same way. I'll leave the adjustment. Yeah, I'm just open. I feel clear. Well, that's your body working better. You know, so this is really important to make sure that you don't have subluxations. One of the things that causes subluxations, we think of posture, position, physical things, diet, stress. Where is it all processed? Through your nervous system. So if you eat Twinkies all day, every day, that can cause disruption in your nervous system, which is going to affect your immune system. So this is part of why the adjustments are so important, just to maximize your immune response. You know, other things you can do, just like clearing the nervous system interference, clearing your sinuses of interference. If you've ever heard of a neti pot, it's a great tool. You know, you ever hear the bulb? You know, you squirt the saline solution in your nose. That's great. It's like a mist. The neti pot takes it one step further. It's like a teapot with a long spout, and you put warm water and a little salt, and you just put the spout into your nostril and you tilt over. The water goes in one side and out the other, and you do the other side. It's a little messy and all that, but it works really well. It cleans your sinuses out. You know, we talk about total body cleanses here and things like that. It's the same process. You're cleaning your body out. You know, I talk to people about doing cleanses. You know, after pollen season is great, before pollen season is great. Because what it does, it takes all that stuff and just cleans your body. Same way an adjustment does, same way a glass of water does. Hydrating yourself is tremendously important, irregardless of what time of year, but especially when we have, green film that's just surrounding us all the time. You know, if you look at your body weight, you say, okay, this is my body weight, I'll divide it in half, that's how many ounces of water I should have a day, just to hydrate the cells and tissues of my body. Now, if you do exercise, you want to increase it, depending on the level and intensity of exercise. But water is very important. Hydrating is very important, especially with allergies, because you want to constantly be flushing this stuff out. And that's basically what a neti pot does, or a cleanse. There are cleanses that you can do just for the sinus passages and the mucous membranes. There are cleanses that basically stimulate the cleaning of the lining of those passages. And that's something that's very simple to do. You know, it's different herbs and things like that. But that's beneficial. And then making sure what controls that all your nervous system is free of interference. You know, we want to make sure there's no subluxation. So these are things that are very important and very beneficial in not only mounting a response, but creating an environment where pollen is just not accepted. Dust and mold, not accepted. I'll breathe it in, but I'm going to remain subclinical, if you will. I'm going to have a defense against it. Because my Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, and Coast Guard, my immune system is coordinated by my nervous system, and my body knows what to do. It's not going to get into a state of fight or flight when I eat a peanut and start mounting a defense against myself. So these are real important things to be aware of. You know, when we talk about allergies, it's much more than what I breathe. And that's, my goal is not to dive so deep into allergies and asthma from a cellular level. I mean, I could talk, about all of these things from a neurological level and the stimulation, different parts of the nervous system, what happened. I want to give you kind of what I call walk-around knowledge, an overview. Why does my body respond this way? Okay, now I have a better understanding of why people have this response. Because my goal too is to help you, but I'll have you explain this to other people, and you never know how you can help them. People don't know. Just like when I was a kid, I was taking, Sudafed left and right. My parents didn't know. They thought they were doing the best thing for me because they didn't have the knowledge. So hopefully this gives you a little more information and a little more insight into how the body works, how it should work in light of all these types of, irritants and things that we're sensitive to, and how you can boost your own body up just by making small changes. Small little changes produce big results. But if we do the same thing we've always done, we're going to get the same result. Sometimes you have to think outside the box, take a step into the unknown, and say, okay, I'm going to try something different. Maybe this will give me a different response.
Well, I can say I know it works because prior to coming to see you a few weeks ago, every spring the pollen would just about, I'd go into coughing fits.
Well, you hear me.
Yeah, and, you know, I didn't start till I was about 48 years old.
Right.
I don't know, it was the food I was eating or, you know, civilization or something, and one of the,
Sometimes it just could be the cumulative effect over years,
It
and
can,
finally you
sure.
reach a
but
threshold.
it's like all of a sudden, and it's been like that for, you know, up until recently,
Right, right.
and it's made a big difference.
It's just,
The dust, I go in the attic or get to sawing some wood or something, I sound like somebody had asthma almost.
yeah. And you probably were having that very hypersensitive response.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
You know, health is very simple. It really is. If you just understand what the body requires and you give it that, and you remove the interferences, the body's going to work better. We're designed to live well into 140, 50 years old. You know, but we just have to understand how the body works and acknowledge that intelligence. I know some of the women are probably saying, well, if that intelligence is expressed in all of us, why does my husband?
Yeah. Just bring him in here, get him adjusted.
Yeah, there you
Lots
go.
smarter.
But that's,
Great idea.
His IQ will skyrocket.
but hopefully this gives you a better understanding of what your body's going through and some things you can do and apply, you know, on a regular basis, just making small changes. So
what can we start not eating now? Stay away from grains. I'm thinking everything you
Well,
name I eat on a regular
if
basis.
you look at how we're designed,
Yeah.
we are, and this goes back to, and I'm going to talk about this, like
Yeah.
genetically, if you look at genes, they haven't changed 40, 50,000 years, right? But our lifestyles have.
Mhm.
So it's like our genetic makeup has not evolved to the point that we're living in a different environment to our environment. So if you look at, and this, you ever hear the paleo diet and things like this?
Yeah.
This was designed by an anthropologist who had no goal to start a diet. What he did was he was studying hunter-gatherer tribes. And studying them, he realized these people were lean, muscular, didn't have any signs of diabetes and heart disease, these chronic conditions, cancers. They died of trauma, they died of infection due to trauma, and they died of old age. Now, what's interesting is you don't have to go 40, 50,000 years. You can look at Aborigines tribes. You can look at the hunter-gatherer tribes of today. And it's the same thing as it was 40, 50,000 years ago. American Indians are a perfect example of this. The American Indian population did not have any signs of any of these conditions that the white man suffered from until we said, hey, you know what, we got a great deal for you.
Yeah.
We're going to take your land. We're going to let you live in this little area, this little box. We'll give you all your food. You don't even have to hunt for it. Now, they became, instead of hunter-gatherers, running, moving, right? Healthy mindset of, I mean, the community within an Indian tribe is amazing. I guess I should say American Indian tribe, right? Now they live in a totally different environment that was not congruent with their makeup, with our makeup. So now the prevalence of alcoholism and cancers and diseases is just like anywhere else. So if you look at what our genetic makeup is and what our body requires, fresh fruits and vegetables, look at the food that was available 40 years ago, 40,000 years ago, 20,000 years ago. Something that was on a tree, grew out of the ground, ran or swam by you, or flew by you. That's it. Fresh fruits and vegetables, healthy lean protein, and if you're eating that, you're going to be eating healthy fats anyway. That's what our body requires. You know, we look at paleo diet or these diets, it's a way of eating.
Mhm.
You know, I changed my diet several years ago, and yeah, I'll have a pizza every now, you know, a slice of pizza or something like that. But when I eat that, boy, I feel different. You know, I eat salads, I eat fresh fruits and vegetables, I eat lean proteins, I juice and things like that. And for me, it's made a huge difference, tremendous difference.
What do you normally eat for breakfast?
What I eat for breakfast, I eat 4 or 5 scrambled eggs. I cook them in coconut oil. And sometimes I'll put a little, well, I always put green, yellow, orange, red peppers in there, parsley, basil. Sometimes I'll put a little ham or sausage, organic stuff, so it's healthy. Scramble them up. I'll have whatever's left over from dinner, broccoli, asparagus, whatever, some greens. And first thing I do is I start drinking water. That's the first thing I do in the morning. I don't drink coffee or anything. So I drink water. I put a little aloe vera juice in there, or aloe vera gel, and that's the first thing I drink in the morning. A couple glasses of tall water, and that's my breakfast. Sometimes I'll have a gluten-free waffle, but that's my breakfast pretty much every day. Any kind of leftover vegetables I eat too, and that's my breakfast. Now, as I'm driving to work, I'll drink my green drink, which is cucumbers and kale, spinach, broccoli. What else do I put in there?
I don't know, but it sounds delicious.
That's what I I mix it up with almond milk and I drink it. But it doesn't. It's a great drink. But that's what I drink in the morning on the way to work. And I'll have about the better part of 20 some ounces a day of that. I'll have that for dinner too. And for lunch, I'll have, today I had salmon, I had some buffalo meat, mixed it all together with sweet potatoes and all the vegetables and cucumbers. I have a big salad every day. Then I'll have a thing of fruit. In the mid-morning, mid-afternoon, I juice. So I have avocado, mango, pineapple, peaches, bananas, strawberries, blueberries, put it all in a blender with almond milk, mix it up with a little protein powder, and that's my drink in the morning.
Now, where do you find that food that's not grown with chemical fertilizer and whatnot?
Well, you have to be a little stealthy and look around. I go to Whole Foods for most of my food, and that's what we have now. If it's organic, it's not going to have any of that. So even if it's natural or healthy, you have to ask. If it doesn't say organic, chances are it's going to be GMO food. Now, the interesting thing is people always say, well, that's got to be expensive. It's no more expensive. We've done this twice now, where the girls and I will go out to Kroger and Martin's and Whole Foods, and we'll price. We have a spreadsheet, which I'll share with you. We have a spreadsheet of all the brand name items, the breakfast items, lunch items, the snacks, the dinners, all the things that typically people buy. And then we went to all the stores and we priced it all out. And Whole Foods was less or the same as every other brand name food item in any other store.
Oh, really?
If you know what to buy at Whole Foods, you buy their brand. Some of the brands are going to be more expensive, but if you buy their brand, pretty much across the board, you're going to spend the same amount of money. Now, their brand pretty much is going to be non-GMO. In fact, Whole Foods is one of the first stores that's starting a GMO campaign where they're going to list on the boxes and things non-GMO. That's how you'll know. But safe to say, if it's in a box in a can and it doesn't have anything labeled on it and it's not organic, it's GMO. And there's certain things that you want to watch certain foods. Peanuts, soy. Those are some of the most GMO affected foods. Corn, rice.
Almonds?
Well, again, you have to look at too, where is it grown and where does it come from? So you have to investigate a little bit.
But grains in general, you shouldn't overindulge in those, you're thinking.
The way I look at it,
GMO or not.
now here's the thing. Cane sugar, grains, they come with it a lot of fiber. So if you're eating a whole grain, you're getting a lot of fiber. Most of that is going to pass through you. But the way we process it, we're stripping away the fiber. Cane sugar is a perfect example. You eat cane sugar from the stalk, most of it's going to go through you because it's
Fiber,
attached to fiber. But we strip it, we use the sugar. Now we increase our level of fat because we don't have the fiber attached to it, so it stays in our body. Can't metabolize it, it builds up. So, what was your question? I had a good answer, but I just can't remember the question. So yeah, the grains. So if you look at the grains, the way we manufacture things, the way I look at it is, and not to be religious, but I'm just going to use the word God. God gave us certain food.
Right.
And he said, this is your food. This is what you need. Okay, great. I appreciate it. You're probably pretty smart. You seem like a nice guy. I'm going to change it a little bit.
As usual, we have a better idea.
I have a better idea. So you start to change that and modify it. And you process the grains. Now you run into the problems. Because now that food is not designed to be eaten by us.
Okay, is that the same with clean and unclean meat?
Sure.
Okay, just thought I'd ask, because it was in there too.
Yeah. It's the same thing.
That means no ham.
Well, again, like I eat ham, but it doesn't have nitrates, doesn't have nitrites.
Right,
It comes from an organic pig or a
leaf-fed
hog
pig, yeah.
that was fed a healthy diet. See, now, take it one step further. What is your food source eating? Are they being fed
Right.
corn? Corn is another one that's a high GMO food. Is it being fed corn? Are my cattle being grazed on grass? Or are they being fed grain that I don't want to eat, but now if I choose not to eat the grain, but my cow or my steer and my buffalo, well, that's what I'm eating.
Mhm.
So you really have to, and we're going to dissect this a lot next talk, but you really have to be educated about it.
And we all need to be homesteaders.
Yeah, I mean, basically.
I gotta make sure Trish shows up for this next one because
Or be
I'll have to get
Amish.
her on board then.
I mean, I'm going to go through another program that I'm starting to do, which is even going to take it a step further. Cleaning products, beauty products.
Mm-hmm.
That's even, a step past what you eat. Look at your, if you say, well, I don't want to eat foods with dyes in them. Now look at your toothpaste.
Oh, yeah.
I'm not going to eat aluminum, but I'll put it on my body.
Mhm.
Doing a lot of research with breast cancer and metals, heavy metals. That's found in a lot of these products. So, people go home, what in the world? Where am I going to live now? What am I going to eat? What am I going to clean with? But when all the products I put in my body and on my body are organic. Shampoos, deodorants, shaving cream, soap, toothpaste.
Can you find all that at Whole Foods?
You can find it at Target, at Whole Foods, at Sam's Club. I buy my coconut oil right at Costco. You get a big thing of it, $10. It's organic. It's and a small thing at Whole Foods would be $10. So in that circumstance, I'm going to Costco.
Mhm.
So we're going to help give you directions on all that. But you can buy a lot of these products anywhere. Probably going to be cheaper at Whole Foods because that's what they buy. That's their store. It's not one section. I always find it interesting if you go into a major store and you say, well, where's the health food section? Oh, it's all the way back there in the corner.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, where's all the other stuff I'm looking at?
Yeah.
But again, those products are not, now some of those specialty products may be a little more. Like I might pay an extra $1 for my deodorant. I'm okay with that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to pay now or later. So I'm okay with that. I don't know how much Crest, Colgate, I don't know how much it costs. But my toothpaste costs, I think it's $4. I don't know if that's a high price or not. But for me, it lasts me a couple of months. I don't know, 2
Yeah.
months. It's worth it.
Spend more on that with coffee,
Yeah.
cups of coffee.
And I'm not placing my values on anyone. That's not what my intent is. I'm just explaining what I do, just because people ask me all the time, what do you do for this or that? But that's taking it even a step further.
Well, it all makes sense.
I mean, when you look at eczema and things like that, well, look at how you clean your clothes. What do you put on your body? Oh my gosh.
I don't use the blue stuff for the same, for that reason. Anything with the colors and all the smell stuff in it,
Yeah.
I try to get the plain with no smell and it's
Yeah.
clear because, I usually get rashy.
I mean, your skin is the biggest exit vehicle for things, but it's also an entry vehicle. We look at eczema, that's a perfect example.
What about oil pulling? Are you familiar with that?
I'm not.
Okay, I think it's odd oils that there's only like 3 that are the best, and I think cottonseed or something. It's an ancient practice that used to be done. That's Christine. She's the one who just started it. And it's like a mouthwash, and you put the oil in your mouth,
Mhm.
and you rinse your mouth with this oil, and you're supposed to do it at the same time every day. And there's a certain way to do it, but it actually, because you think about all the food and everything that you're putting in your mouth, it pulls all those chemicals out because they enter in that
It's like
way.
bleaching them out.
Yes, and there's this big study, I guess, that was just done, and this I got it from Christine, and she had a website, so ask her about it.
Yeah.
But she is trying it, and she says that she sees benefits from it.
Yeah.
And no offense, I love her to death, but she doesn't always keep up with stuff. She tries it and everything is great,
Yeah.
and then she quits. Well, my friend Mary Sue is trying it, And now she keeps up with things, but she said that she feels better, and she has just been through this horrible bout of breast cancer, and she's got some other things going on there, and she's feeling better just by doing the oil pulling. And
Yeah.
and she tried it. She says, well, what can it hurt at this point? It's
Yeah.
natural, you know. And she said she's shocked.
Well, it's like a lot of the
it
things
makes her feel
that,
better.
when you look at the American Indians and things like, they would go into a steam room and things like that,
Right.
So it's the same thing, it's detoxifying and cleansing.
Mhm.
So I didn't mean to go off on those tangents, but it's.
So we got you started.
It's good stuff, I mean,
Right.
I could go on for hours, but those are important things to be aware of, and a lot of people are not. They just don't know, it's.
And some people just don't care. It's too much trouble.
Oh, yeah.
Well, you
I
know
don't
why?
care.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Because,
That's all, yeah, that's all we're talking about.
and they don't know what's happening down here.
Right.
We wonder why, people in their 70s and 80s, and, as we get older, people don't, they're not as healthy as they used to be. Well, why is that? Well, like you said, when I turned 48, was it turning 48, or was it the cumulative effect of everything that's done up to that point
Mhm.
that's now brought me to where I am? And that's what we see a lot of time. The good thing is, 2 years of healthy lifestyle, you actually regenerate your entire body, cells, and tissues, and you can change the direction from that point forward.
Wow.
Yeah.
We don't, I've got a
In
lot.
2 years, you said.
2 years it takes, yeah, that's about what it takes.
Hmm.
Yeah, I mean, we're reinventing ourselves every
Mhm.
millisecond to millisecond. You're always accumulating new cells and tissues,
Mhm.
but it takes about that long for your body to, it's kind of like flush everything out and restart.
Even with doing cleanses on a regular basis and things like that
Yeah.
to try to.
Because you're talking about cellular level
Okay.
and chemistry,
Mhm, mhm.
so.
Well, if you're gonna live to be in your late 90s or early 90s, even, or however long, you wanna feel healthy, you wanna feel good, no matter
Yeah.
when your pass away point may be.
Then you want to function healthy.
That's right.
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, the way I look at it, 140, 150, I don't know how long to be here, but I certainly want to have the highest quality of life.
Oh, yeah.
And it's what you do today. You make small little sacrifices sometimes that some people say. To me, it's not. It's just, I want to be healthy. And I know everything that I put in my body is going to have a consequence.
Mhm.
I eat pizza every once in a while, I'll have this or that. But I know that's a minimal thing.
And you probably get all sweaty and start to feel kind of funny after
Well,
you've
when I
eaten
go for a
it
run the
because-
next day, I definitely feel a difference.
Yeah.
I'm sluggish, I don't feel as, I
Yeah.
don't have the energy I do.
Mhm.
But you're supposed to carb up before you run.
Oh, that's a whole other thing we can talk to you about. A lot of changes with that. Actually, protein is better. Carb
Good.
loading, yeah. But
I can't eat
For
the
another
carbs.
talk, I'll
They
be here
don't-
another half
yeah,
hour.
The carbs don't agree with
So-
me, so I don't do that. I said, well,
Yeah.
I don't care. They can carb up all they want, but I feel horrible when I eat them, so I don't.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's actually not how the body works.
Oh, I'm
We're
so glad.
told to do that, carb load, but yeah.
Yeah, I
So
don't,
that'll be another
and I
talk.
don't because it doesn't feel good, so there you go.
Yeah.
Okay, well, you did mention something about eating certain things that can help, like